Well, as you've been hearing for some time, the Premier Mark McGowan is getting ready to announce a cabinet reshuffle. Presumably sometime before Christmas. Alana McTiernan, we know, is on the way out of politics, so she will need to be replaced. And yesterday, Dave Kelly resigned as a minister, although he made it clear that was not his preference. He said he was doing it at the request of the Premier to make way for more women in cabinet. So the normal discussion would focus around which MPs deserve a promotion, which ministers are performing badly and need to be dumped. But what about something completely different? What about something radical instead? That is perhaps a description you might apply to what's being proposed today by the leader of the legalised cannabis party in WA, Dr. Brian Walker. I'll let him explain, and then you can tell me what you think. 1300 222 720. That's the number to call. 1300 222 720. Dr. Walker, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Now, this is very generous of you, offering some free advice to the Premier. What do you think? What do you think he should be doing?
Well, the question we've got is, are the people appointed in a ministerial position the best for the job? Alana McTiernan was absolutely fantastic. Her loss is going to be grievously felt. But how do you replace someone like that? And at the moment, it's allegedly gender politics. Well, it's not quite true. He's got to balance the factions there. So he's promised two posts to the UWU for the loss of one of their members as a minister, to balance things out, make it sweet. And so what we're getting is not actually appointees on merit. We're getting people who are there because they fit the needs of the time with the factions and with the various infighting that's going on, which means that we're not best served, are we? We're not getting the people in ministerial positions to know what they're doing. Our health minister, for example, wouldn't know how to hold a sphygmomanometer. And yet the cabinet in confidence is kept secret from us, and we're being guided by people who really don't have any medical clue. So the policy should really be, as Alana came into Parliament as a minister, that was before she was elected into the upper house, as some months before we convened. There's actually no law stopping ministers from being appointed from outside government. You don't have to be elected. You don't have to be in the upper house or the lower house. Why don't we appoint people in a ministerial position because they're the best people for the job? Would that be radical?
So somebody who's not an elected member of Parliament, somebody from outside the Parliament who would have expertise in that portfolio.
Yes, can you imagine an international accredited expert in health management as a health minister rather than someone who's actually an administrator and journalist? Would that not be better?
Well, that's a question for our listeners. 1300 222 720. Let me know what you think of this idea from Dr. Brian Walker from the legalised cannabis party in WA, appointing ministers based on their expertise and potentially from outside Parliament. What do you make of that? 1300 222 720. Dr. Walker, does it matter though that the health minister, can't hold a stethoscope? I mean, surely skills like management, administration, leadership, they're the qualities that are most important in a minister.
Oh, very much so. But imagine an Attorney General who's not actually a lawyer, helping to craft the laws which determine how we live our lives. The same thing with the health portfolio. If you have got no clue what's actually going on, you're depending on other people telling you what's going on. It's like being a tourist, seeing a country but firsthand or hearing about it, looking at people's pictures. You haven't experienced it. You don't know what's going on. So the bureaucrats who are actually telling the minister what's going on, they've got an agenda. The people at the front line, the doctors and the nurses, are actually, the ones who carry the can, they're not being listened to. And so the health policies are being created by bureaucrats and not by people who actually serve the people.
But isn't that selling the ministers a bit short there, Dr. Walker? I mean, their job is to take that advice on board, but then make their own decisions based on the advice they've been given. They don't necessarily always implement it exactly as it's given to them.
Oh, indeed. I mean, particularly my area of experience is health. Looking at COVID, for example, the vaccines, how effective are they? We don't actually know because the science has been covered up. The cabinet and confidence information isn't being shared with us. So when people ask me in my clinic, where I am just now, what's the truth about COVID vaccines, I have to say, honestly, I don't know. There's so much misinformation and disinformation going out there, and the stuff that we have in Parliament is actually kept secret. So it's not actually shared with the politicians. So from her own party, but also not with the only qualified doctor in the upper house. I've got no idea what's being told, so I can't judge. And I have to ask, are we serving the people by keeping things secret? How do we know that the best is being done for us? We're assuming that the government is doing the best thing for us. How much do you trust government?
Well, I have to say, I hope that if a doctor was appointed as health minister, they would recommend that people get the vaccines because they have been accepted as, as something that's helped us get through the pandemic and out the other side. That's what most of the medical advice says, and I'm happy to take the word of the Chief Health Officer here and the Australia's Chief Medical Officer on that front. But turning back to your broader sort of point about appointing ministers on merit, I mean, is this even possible? Would it be legal?
Yes, the constituent pointed out a legal loophole. There's no actual there's no demand. A parliamentary secretary has to be an elected member of parliament, but ministers, that is not mentioned specifically in the law.
I'm getting a few text messages through, which I might put to you if that's okay, Dr. Walker. Dr. Brian Walker, my guest on Mornings today from the Legalised Cannabis Party in WA, and suggesting that maybe ministers don't have to be members of parliament. They should be experts in their field. Mike in Corrine says, no way, in a democracy, ministers must be accountable to the people. This one says, those experts are heads of departments. Ministers, by their position, must be party loyal. Doctors are trained to help sick people, not run hospitals, says this one. And another says, so you are actually asking for a bureaucrat to be a minister. What do you make of that, Dr. Walker?
Well, we do have bureaucrats who are ministers. That's the problem.
Isn't that the reverse of what you're saying? Aren't you saying that somebody needs to be an expert, i.e. a bureaucrat, they should be the minister?
No. The experts are the ones who've got the hands-on experience. One person said,
sorry to interrupt, Dr. Walker, but just on that point, I mean, we literally have a doctor as Director General of the Health Department at the moment. So isn't that your point? That's what you want?
Well, he's actually obliged to abide by what the government is doing. So he gives advice. Whether that advice is followed or not doesn't really make any difference. He can put his input in there, but it's actually finally the decision is taken by the minister.
Okay, but you'd be happy, for example, let's say the government said, let's appoint Dr. David Russell-Wise as the Minister for Health. You'd be okay with that?
Oh, I would, as long as he's accountable to the people.
And that is a good point, actually. How would they be accountable to the people if they can't be voted out?
Well, this is where the Premier comes in, because if you're appointing someone, you can unappoint them, can you not? You serve the people. This is what we do as members of Parliament. We swear an oath when we come in that we serve the people of Western Australia. And my contention is that we're not serving the people of Western Australia. We serve the party first and foremost.
And this is not uncommon in some other countries in the world. You're a well-travelled man. You would have seen this happen in the US, for example.
Yes, indeed. That's precisely the point. People are appointed who are capable for that, and they are responsible to the president, and they are appointed at the president's pleasure. And if the people are unhappy and the president agrees, that person goes.
And you've been quite open about the fact that you still practice as a GP, even though you're a member of Parliament now. Do you think that helps you to stay in touch while you're in Parliament? Is it hard to juggle the two jobs?
Oh, it's hard. I'm an exhausted person, certainly, but it gives me a level of credibility because when I speak about, say, mental health issues, I'm at the front line. I deal with this on a regular basis in my clinic. So I'm not talking theory, I'm talking practical experience. For example, the psychedelics, far improved performance with that, but banned by government. So people are dying because they haven't got access to drugs which are very safe and very, very effective.
And I must say, recently, yes, Dr. Walker, you were congratulated, I think, even by a government minister recently for managing to shoehorn your campaigns in the Legalised Cannabis Party into almost any other discussion or debate in the Parliament. So you've been nothing if not consistent. Thank you very much for taking some time to talk me through this concept this morning. Maybe a little unrealistic to expect the Premier will take on board your ideas, but good to ventilate them anyway. Thank you so much.
Absolutely right. Thank you. Bye.
Dr. Brian Walker, leader of the Legalised Cannabis Party here in Western Australia. Plenty of you getting in touch about the concept being proposed by Dr. Brian Walker from the Legalised Cannabis Party, talking about this at the start of the program. The idea of appointing ministers outside of the Parliament. They sort of have this concept in the United States where you bring in effectively their equivalent of ministers because of their expertise in a particular portfolio area, not because they've been elected by the people. So how does that idea go down with you? Well, fair to say it's a fairly mixed reaction. Sue on the text line says, good morning. It concerns me that Dr. Walker is continuing to work in his practice. Surely he has responsibilities in the electorate. He does, Sue, but he says he works very hard to do both jobs and keep his GP practice running. This texter says, turning a minister into an unelected bureaucrat is a terrible idea. At the moment, we have a guy who sets interest rates for the whole country, and we have no power to remove him if he does a bad job. The positions become completely partisan with very little accountability. No, you can't remove the governor of the Reserve Bank yourself, but the government can. He's got a contract. Angus and Willoughby says this guy must be high. Ministers are meant to be elected, therefore accountable. Public servants are the experts who serve the ministers. It's called checks and balances. And Angus, just wondering if there's some sort of conspiracy theory going on here. Having ministers with experience and skills for their portfolio makes enormous sense, says Joanne. Love the concept of putting the best person into the role. Belinda's wondering, what will the elected politicians do? Get paid for doing nothing. I do agree you should have experience in your portfolio, though, so maybe we are letting the wrong people into politics, i.e., I do agree someone with a medical background should be Minister for Health.